Welcome to United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America on WSGW. Now, here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. We have the whole crew back together here today. As you can see to my right, I got my main man, Mark Bassett. Mark, what's good with you, my guy?
It's great to be back in the saddle again, baby.
It is back in the saddle. It seems like it's
right
been
off
forever.
of the Aerosmith Rocks album, Back in the Saddle.
And we also have John B at the place to be. What's going on? He is our producer.
Hello, hello.
How are you doing today, John?
Doing great.
You look rested a bit.
Having a good time.
He does look not stressed. He's looked stressed the last few times I
What's
was
new
here.
in the world?
Stress is new in the world.
But we're here, and we're glad to have Mark here. It's always great to have him here.
Good to
He
be
has
here, man.
been flying all over the world and changing lives and perspectives and opinions and making the world a better place, one conversation at a time. So, Mark, your last few trips, I guess, where have they taken you?
Well, I think since I've missed the last couple of weeks. I was back in Southern California. SoCal, baby. Corona Del Mar, or as the locals call it, CDM.
CDM, okay.
Corona Del Mar, which is part of Newport Beach. So we were in Newport Beach for a couple of weeks.
Beautiful. I love it out there. What was the weather like out there?
It was very nice. Where we were very close to the coastline. So I would say during the day, it was in the mid to high 70s. At night, probably mid to high 60s.
Yeah.
Sunny every day. One day was a little bit of drizzle, but not much.
Hey, Tony said it never rains in Southern California. Look at that's why you my man. Give me some.
Yeah. If you went inland, it was getting up into the high 90s.
You go inland California anywhere at this time, and it's hot out there.
It is.
Are the no smoke from the fires and none of that stuff going on right now?
No.
All right, so I guess
it was great. I loved it. I'm a beach guy at heart, so it was great being there.
Now he's a beach guy. You're also a surfer, correct?
Body surfer.
Body surfer. Tell us the difference between the two.
Well, a surfer is what everyone knows. You get up on a board, you're standing above the water. Body surfing, you basically the wave carries your body. You're not on a board. You kind of lay out in front of the wave, and the force of the wave pulls you along, and you can ride it and everything. Not as well as with the surfboard, but obviously you're not body surfing 20-foot waves, though.
Yeah.
2 feet is kind of all I would do.
I ain't body surfing nothing. We're gonna be wading our toes in the water at the shore, right? Especially are they now in Southern Cal? Are they sharks a big thing? Because they seem to be making appearances
there are sharks
in the cast
there.
all over the country wherever there's water.
Yeah, there are there's sharks in the ocean. Yeah, there are sharks there.
Did I just get slapped with the dodo cloud or something? I think there are sharks in the ocean, Kareem.
Yeah. However, I think it's not one of the hot spots of where there are shark attacks.
Okay.
I know Florida is some of them. South Carolina, off Myrtle Beach, there are.
Yeah. Even up near New York, man, it's crazy how this just at this particular time that's happening. We were having a conversation a while back, a couple of weeks ago. You weren't here, Mark, and I'm going to get your thoughts.
Okay.
Being a scientist as well. We were talking and Jonathan, we were talking about the temperatures and how the world is like, oh my gosh, it's the hottest year on record, and it falls within the 1%, whatever it was. What are your thoughts about that? And is this just a cycle that the Earth is going through? And I think that's kind of what your position was.
And I think it's a combination of. I do believe in global warming, and it's incrementally increasing the temperature.
It's a thing.
I do think it's a thing. That being said, I do think there's natural variations that occur. So, like if someone says, "Well, it's the hottest 1%," well, there has to be a hottest 1%, just like there's the coldest 1%, and there's just a natural variation that occurs. So I think laying on top of that, though, I do think global warming is real. I just don't think if we don't do something today, the world's gonna end in 20 years. I just don't think
you don't think that.
No.
So you don't think carbon emissions and all of these?
I do think it's
gases...
important, but we need to work on reducing those. I just don't see personally I think there's urgency, but I don't see it as, if we don't fix something in a year, the world is going to be over in 20 years, like some of these people think.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think that's fair. So, Mark, what's going on with Mary? I haven't heard from Mary. I haven't seen Mary. She
She's
hasn't
just
been
living the life, man.
she hasn't been making up, these impromptu
Visits.
appearances.
Yeah, we've been too busy. She loved, she grew up in Southern California, Laguna Beach, which is the next town down
Laguna Beach.
from where we were, maybe a 10-minute.
Say that,
Laguna
Jonathan.
Beach.
Laguna Beach.
Laguna. You remember?
Don't that sound nice?
Yeah.
Just Laguna Beach. Yeah.
There was an MTV show based on that town.
Laguna Beach.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right. That was the name of it.
Yeah.
I do remember. You're talking my language now. MTV,
it's
the real world. Yeah.
It's an artist community, but a very wealthy town. There's a house that's being sold at Laguna Point for $42 million. So that's crazy money. Crazy money.
Crap.
But she loved being there. She left when she was 18 to go to Notre Dame, which is where we met. And she really hasn't been back very consistently. So it was kind of an eye-opening experience for her to be back home and how kind of.
So she still have like family and.
She does. All of her siblings. She was one of 6. The oldest has passed, but the other 5 live in either. Greater LA area or Orange County, which is where Newport Beach is.
Okay, wow, that is so cool. All right, so we're gonna talk a little bit about today's show is just gonna be interesting, I think. But I want to talk a little bit about the Alabama brawl. I called it the Harriet Tubman 2.0 brawl. And that's because the name of the boat that this took place on was called the Harriet Tubman Ferry or whatever it was. So anyways, unless you've been under a rock like
I was under a rock. Kareem texted it to me and I was like, what is this? I haven't seen this.
Like the 2 individuals that are in the studio with me, you know what I'm talking about. It has been on every major news outlet. Now, I always like to see the reason I really was interested was because I like to see social media travels so much faster than the news media. So you may not get all the correct information, but you'll get the scoop a lot faster via social media than you would any other form because everyone is a reporter now, right? So it's always interesting to see what social media puts forth, and then to see mainstream news media go back and create a story out of these things, especially when you have the kind of commentary. We were sitting here before laughing at the kind of commentary that happens, and the social media has the video has to be included in the actual broadcast because there's no other footage of it.
That's the only footage. Well, it's kind of a weird phenomenon of today's day and age where there's a brawl and you got 50 people sitting there recording, cheering, laughing, encouraging. And you kind of go like, well, what's wrong here?
What's wrong with this picture?
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, you can Google Alabama brawl, Alabama boat brawl, just brawl at this point.
Alabama
probably
brawl is what I did.
I was looking at one of the posts and it was like 52 million views. So at this time, I think everyone, including China, is aware. I mean, you probably could Google this in North Korea and come up with something.
Well, it reminded me a little bit about like in Korea, they would have those fights in parliament, and then people would be jumping over tables.
And they would go crazy.
Yeah.
And we'd be like, oh, we would never do that.
Yeah.
But anyway, wait a minute. Before we get to this conversation, because I think this is an interesting story, but nobody has said a single solitary word about the black dude who decided he was just going to go across the border, the military guy.
Oh, that guy. Yeah.
To Korea.
It's been in the news. Again, I don't follow that closely. I guess he was going to be in trouble. So to avoid the trouble, he went to North Korea, which doesn't seem like a very smart decision to me, but okay.
Hey, I'm not going to jail. I'm going to North Korea. To a communist country, which may probably throw me in jail or incarcerate me. I mean,
use you as a
Jonathan,
you're propaganda.
You know what's happening in the news more than any of us. Have you heard anything?
Well, obviously I don't. If I didn't know about this Alabama brawl, I haven't heard any updates on it since he ran across the border. I think kind of this. I like to look at the situation surrounding someone doing something stupid. One, he was laughing as he ran across, according to witnesses.
Right. Yeah.
And 2, the thing that really struck me that I thought was like, oh, that's how things are there. It was on a tour, and the tour guide told the group run because they didn't know what the North Korean side was going to do. Yeah.
And I was like, you don't get shot down crossing. Here in the United States, they scoop you up, throw you in the back of a truck, and put a hood over your head, and you wake up wherever getting
So East
interrogated.
Berlin, he would have been shot. Well, running towards East Berlin is a different thing than running away from East Berlin.
Well, there was a guy, I want to say 7 to 10 years ago that got shot running north to south.
Well, for sure.
Well, of course,
yeah.
you're not
on the
getting
north
out of
side.
there.
That's
yeah.
like running away from East Berlin in
Yeah,
that dead man
exactly.
zone, basically.
So what are your thoughts? Do you think that they'll treat him as, well, he's not a POW, but
I think they're going to use him as a propaganda tool. That's really how, that would be the
do you
smart thing
think
to do.
show him living life?
Yeah,
Oh, it's great here in North
you're
Korea.
Basically force him to say, and maybe, whatever. He's going to say how great it is and how well he's being respected and treated, and
Even if it's not true.
even if it's not true.
I mean, but think about it. If they threw, great money, great time, give him an apartment like the last
The
person who
Dennis Rodman
disappeared.
treatment.
Yeah, give him the Dennis Rodman treatment. It would be kind of interesting. People would be like, maybe it's not so bad. They just don't want us to go there.
Have you ever seen the documentary that the wrestlers went over to North Korea?
No.
It's a pretty interesting documentary of how they were all scared for their life.
I would
frankly.
be. I wouldn't go to
Yeah.
North Korea.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So, anyways, okay. So back to the story at hand. We're going to get back.
The Bama brawl.
The
Let's shorten
Bama,
it to the Bama brawl.
The Bama brawl.
The
That's
Bama
what we
brawl.
go. That's probably a more appropriate name. The Bama brawl.
Roll Tide.
I was thinking the basketball, thinking about the Pistons, but no, we're talking about the Bama brawl. So, what basically takes place? The earliest footage that I've been able to see is that there was a family that was out, probably boating. Obviously, what a lot of folks do is they get in those boats and they
This
go
is
out.
a pontoon boat you're talking about.
Yeah, pontoon boat. You're not a speedboat.
Not the Tubman boat, but the pontoon boat.
Yeah,
Lots
yeah.
of drinking.
So there was like a family or friends, a group of
a
folks.
group of people.
And they were probably out, drinking on the pontoon because pontoons move at a snail's pace, and you don't have to worry. Some of them got they kind of move sometimes, but it's not like something that like a speedboat that
Right.
you're going to be sitting there continually worried about where you're going. And so people fish, and it's kind of like a party boat. So you get on the boat, you enjoy yourself, enjoy the time. They had parked in a place where the ferry boat was supposed to be coming back.
Illegally parked.
And they were illegally parked at sea. And so I guess the security guy, who happened to be a black man, so the people that are on the pontoon boat are white folks. The security guy or the boat
I thought it was
master,
the captain of the boat.
He was the captain of the Harriet Tubman 2.0.
Yep.
Now, these names are...
That's not the real name, right?
It is the Harriet Tubman 2.0.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
it is.
Okay.
This is what is so interesting
Okay.
about this. So it's
All
the Harriet Tubman was the name of the ferry.
Yeah.
So he takes it upon himself because they have to park across from their docking point because his boat is there. They told them not to park there. They did anyway. So he takes it upon himself to move the pontoon boat back a couple
Well, I think
feet.
he goes in. Well, my understanding was he took a dinghy in to tell them to move.
Yeah, and they wouldn't move.
They wouldn't move.
And so then he moves it back,
Okay.
so that it's out the way, so they can get, because they got a boat full of people,
Right. Yeah,
that
the
are
people
on this-
on the boat are getting upset.
This
Like,
is
"Hey, I
where all
wanna
the
go
footage
home,
is
man."
coming from.
Yeah.
So there's a ferry that's sitting there, and so the people are watching on the other side of the river. And when he does it, he's confronted by the owners of the pontoon. Words were exchanged. Eventually, the drunk cousin Woodrow,
Gomer,
there you go,
or Goober, one of the two.
Woodrow, Goober, because there were a few of them, came out and started throwing punches. Now, the funniest thing in the world, initially, I was just kind of like, okay, so why did he take his hat off and just throw it in the air? I don't know if you guys noticed.
I didn't see that.
Okay,
yeah.
so Captain, the black guy, takes his hat off after he's been punched a couple of
It's a
times.
good hat. He doesn't want it to get ruined in the fight, man.
But he tosses it in the air. It only becomes funny after they say that this was his Wakanda call. Now, those of you who know what Wakanda is, if you've ever seen Black Panther, the movie, this is all world news. I promise you. Black Panther, the movie, where there's this black civilization and kingdoms and things of that nature that are going on. So they call it his Wakanda call. He takes his hat off and he throws it in the air.
That's the signal.
It's the signal.
Okay.
But you hear the commentary in the back. Ooh, they hitting that old man. Oh, and it was just the most crazy thing in the world. And I'm talking about it. I'm explaining it just so that you guys have a point of
Well,
reference.
the best part was the kid that jumps in the water.
Okay, now
Go ahead.
For those of you who say that black folks don't swim,
I think he was doggy paddling.
He was in full breaststroke, getting to the other side. Now I'd have been dead halfway in the water. I'm not gonna lie. Like I used to be a very good swimmer, but at this stage of the game, I would have jumped in, taken a couple strokes, and be like, okay, I'm gonna backstroke this the rest of the way. He actually has enough strength to pull himself up. He gets involved. And dude's got a nice 1-2 combo.
Well, I love the commentary again. Come on, young buck.
Yeah, come on, young buck. So there is this entire interesting dynamic that's going on. So what happens is there's probably about, at this point, women and children and babies. There's probably about 4 or 5, maybe 6 white folk that are now beating up this young, this older black man that's on the dock. And so he throws his hat up, which gives the call of Wakanda for everyone to come to rescue. Then suddenly it turns into, the Avengers, and we got superheroes coming, running down platforms. The boat finally docks, and you see several of the workers. It was mostly his co-workers that were there. Jump off the boat, and I'm like, oh, this is getting ready to be really crazy. Get me the popcorn and get me something to drink. Now, I am not an advocate of violence, but this is what you call entertainment. I think it was so much entertainment because it started out one way, and these people thought that they were just going to be drunken jerks and just really beat this guy up. And all of his co-workers came to his rescue. And so you see women, these women, they look like they were on the boat and like, we're going to get her because she shouldn't. Those 2 women, you see black women beating up white women. You see these young, virile men now fighting old men, women, children. Then we got a guy, we got Aquaman who has just jumped across, Aquaman. So Aquaman now jumps off. He comes to the rescue. He's giving up 2-piece and a biscuit combos. And then we have this chair. Now, this is the craziest thing on the planet.
I haven't seen that part yet.
There is an older black man, and I think he said he blacked out. And I don't know if he had a scene from, Emmett Till or something that happened in the past, but he blacked out and he just starts hitting people with chair, like a folding chair.
Like a wrestling match.
Yes. So Aquaman and the folding chair man become the, award winners of this particular thing. The police finally come, they break this thing up, and it is fodder for the past 3 or 4 days.
There's an arrest warrant for the 3 white guys that kind of initiate. Because what was interesting is the 2 guys, the one white guy and the one black guy, the boat captain and Gomer,
they were arguing.
Talking. They're talking, but then Gomer took a swing at the captain.
Yeah.
And then there was 2 kind of middle-aged white people that looked like they were trying to intervene.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, Gomer's friend Goober comes flying comes flying out of right field, jumping on top of the boat captain.
Yeah. And so this has literally, for those of you who are listening, this is literally, it is a viral moment. Hopefully that we wish that many wish we could take back, but it is out there and the world is talking.
This happens more than you think.
And it's commentary. That's what I'm saying. It's commentary and memes and all these things. But that's where I wanted to. So we had that conversation to get to this point. And you said it, Mark.
Go ahead. What was that?
No, what was that? I was just talking.
What?
No, you were saying that this.
I mean, even back in my day. I mean,
right.
I played JV. I was a basketball player in high school.
Right.
I had a JV basketball game, and we had one of those situations where a parent didn't like what the ref was doing. They got on the floor, and it literally escalated into about parents coming off the stands, coaches coming out of the bench, and players coming out. About 30 or 40 people on the court fighting. And I was just this skinny little kid. I was like 6 feet, 150 pounds at the time. I just remember, I'm not getting in the middle of that, just walking back to the bench and sitting down on the bench.
I mean, I've seen it happen before so many times, but this is a real conversation. So we're going to have a real conversation about this because it's interesting because I have conversations, and this is United States, and I think it's a great place to kind of unpack this beyond all of the humor and the funny moments. And I think, let me think of how many black superheroes were created out of this. We have Aquaman, who is, it's Mayne, because in the black community, say, what's up, Maine? So he's Aquaman. Then there is the chairman. And then
Young Buck.
Yeah, this Young Buck. But then there was, who was it? Blurb Man, because he got there so fast. No, he just came in and started hitting people. So all of these things, and it was funny because in Black America, especially I say Black Twitter, Beyonce's Twitter. So on Black Twitter, it was blowing up and going crazy. And it wasn't just about Black people beating up white people. That's not what the story is. But it was about an idiot, first of all, who thought that he was going to be rude and thought he could do what he wanted to do and fight this older gentleman, Ricky Smiley. If you guys know who Ricky Smiley, you got to go check out. He's a comedian. Listen to his commentary. He says this old man's just trying to make sure he can help his kids, his grandkids have school supplies going back to school because he didn't want to stand in the line down there where they were giving out the free backpacks. And so this kind of thing where we see this dynamic happen, and Mark, you said this before, even when the George Floyd thing, took place, a lot of us were saying like these things happen all the time, and these happen all the time. So I think this was another example of where we see these things take place. If there are no
do you
cameras,
think this was racially motivated? I just think like this was a drunk
I
moron.
think that they're idiots.
And if even an Asian or a white person pushed his boat away, I think he would have done the same thing.
Okay, no, and to your point, I think this is the guys took out the boat and they went down there and they went to catch some bass and some of them other things. I think it was one of them things. But I think what is interesting is that I think it was a situation. I don't think in their minds it was racially motivated. I think in their minds they just thought we're going to do what we want to. And if it had been some white folks, they probably would have done the same thing. However, I think that what is puzzling or what is frustrating is the fact that this is something that we have seen so many times in the Black community, and people say that these things don't exist, so it was just a coincidence. But to see the dynamics, we're in Alabama of all the places in the planet to be, with a whole bunch of white folks beating up on a Black man, in a place that I did some research, that area, and there was a place not far from there where they used to sell slaves. There's such a historical perspective of what's going on. The name of the ship, once again, the Harriet Tubman 2.0. There's a number of things. And I think Black America is just saying, we have seen this one too many times. And I think that was what it was. I don't condone violence, but I was just sitting there like, good. For the first time, you see that you're not going to just sit there and be the Black man and Black folks going to sit there and sing Kumbaya. Right. I'm kind of somewhere in between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X version of justice. I'll be peaceful, but if you slap me, I'm slapping you.
Yeah,
back.
you have a right to defend yourself.
Yeah, and so it was very interesting. Yep. The perspectives. And so I was looking at how the media, not the media, but the mayor, who happens to be, they have a Black mayor in this particular area, and he's in a very interesting place because I think a part of him was saying, good for you, but at the same time, you can't go around knocking people out with chairs. Even though the chair, I think, gets an honorable mention in this particular one.
I'm gonna have to watch that.
And the award for America's Avenger hero, I think the new superhero, along with Aquaman, will be Aquaman.
Oh, it's Montgomery, Alabama.
Yeah, Montgomery, Alabama. I mean, so we're marching from Montgomery to Salama. I mean, there's just so many pieces of this story that I think are super duper interesting. And it provided a great deal of fodder. But I think those guys, wherever they were from, whichever road they were on, and I got something interesting I want to share with you guys when we come back from this break after we take real quick. He's going to realize that you got to watch what you do, and you can't just be jumping people when they seem by themselves, because there are often people that are around that may care and have connections and relationships with folks. One thing that I've taken into understanding is that you can't talk about anybody in front of people anymore.
Everybody's taping everything.
Everybody's taping. Yep. And then so many people are related and connected in ways that we can't even begin to understand.
Well, there's people out there taping, frankly, trying to instigate things.
Absolutely. I mean, hey, we want to go world star. We want them to buy our video for CNN and Fox News and all of the other headline news. Calvin Skinner, amen, Pastor K, I feel just like you. It was an interesting moment in time, and I think Black America celebrated the fact that at the end of this, we didn't end up in the street saying that we couldn't breathe, but we stood up, fought a battle, and we protected our own. So kudos to those who are out there, and thank you for the great entertainment. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to United Shades of Gray on WSGW.
This is Kareem, and we're back with more United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. We were talking about, what would you call it, Mark?
The Royal Rumble. It was a Royal Rumble.
The Royal Rumble from down under.
Yeah.
But now we're coming back, and we're gonna talk today. We started a conversation on gentrification, and Mark is so well versed in this kind of stuff. We're just, I can't wait to get his perspectives on this. But we were talking last week, and it was a very interesting conversation. And I want to continue it this week. But before we start that conversation, I got to share with you guys something really cool that's happening. So my family, I've shared the story on several occasions about how my family has, they were sold into slavery by Jesuit priests to keep Georgetown University open. Well, we were invited, the entire, what is called GU 272, the 272 descendants of those slaves that were sold.
There's only 272 descendants at this point?
Well, there's 272 slaves that were sold.
Okay, so there's got to be thousands of descendants.
Yeah. There's thousands of us out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we out here now.
Yeah.
But anyways, we were invited. There's a whole, you prove your relationship. They have a list. Of course, it was kind of easy to prove. My cousin happened to be on TV, so we kind of have that documentation. But there is I don't want to say if it's a reunion of sorts, because it is kind of a reunion, but my family has been invited back August 31st
to Georgetown or to
September 3rd. The whole thing.
Okay.
It's really kind of interesting. We're going to what is a city called California, Maryland, which I guess is where the plantation was.
Okay.
So the entire family has, and the descendants of these 272 slaves.
It's going to be a big party.
Yeah. So we've all been invited back to the plantation. So we're going to do tours of, I guess there's 2 plantations that these individuals were taken from when they were sold to Maringouin, Louisiana. It's just outside of Baton Rouge. When we were kids growing up, that's, we go to my great grandmother's house down there. Across from this huge ravine where there was alligators and snakes and everything else. And so what's that?
It's way down here in the peninsula.
Yeah, it's
kind of pretty far south.
I didn't even know
Richmond
the place
and
existed. Didn't know the place existed. So the entire family's going down, and there's a series of tours. So on the 31st and the 1st,
that area gets really rural, really fast.
I could imagine. Yeah, I could imagine. So we're doing 2 tours of the 2 different plantations. And then a trip to Georgetown University, and having conversations with the Jesuit priests in Georgetown, which is going to be quite interesting. To descendants of slaves, sitting down and having these conversations with the descendants of those slave owners, and having conversations, because I told you guys before that the students at Georgetown said, hey, we need to do reparations. This university would not have been open. And for us to have this opportunity for education, if this wouldn't but I think the conversation is going to be interesting. I think meeting, and then there's kind of like a reunion, and meeting folks who were sold, your ancestors were sold together. Some of these individuals are now cousins. When I looked at the list and I saw Crump and all these other names, these are names that were a part of my family's history, and it was really quite interesting. So I can't wait to have that experience. I'll share you guys. I'm going to take as many pictures and video clips as we possibly can so that you guys can have that experience. I think that it's going to be a very emotional, I can imagine, very, very emotional moment for the family. But this is something that most Blacks here in America that are descendants of slaves don't have an opportunity to do. We know that we went to slavery at some point and it ends there, but to be able to make the connection with those individuals, we may actually even be able to find out even greater information in terms of, what ships and things, because this is kind of the port, as you looked at the map, what that looks like. So anyways, that is more to come. But it was something that I thought we should share, that this is really a cool opportunity. I wish everyone
should bring Jonathan with you and tape a show, or record a show.
Jonathan, would you like to be? Jonathan, could I be your master and then we go down there? I'm just joking. I'm just
You
joking.
kind of are, aren't you?
No, I'm not. Jonathan is the boss. He tells me when to shut up and when to start. We are still tap dancing on this plantation. No, but let's get to the conversation that's at hand. On last week, we were having a conversation because there's a lot has been taking place, and we understand, and Mark, we've talked about this to some degree, that like Midland and what we've seen in Bay City,
Yeah, I think Bay City is a great
a
analogy.
great example.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a whole new town that now exists where there
Which
were
brings in revenue and income
abandoned
and
buildings and
taxes,
warehouses. Now we have a state-of-the-art YMCA. We've got a huge
Restaurants.
chain restaurants and other local restaurants that are there.
apartments, condos,
Hotels, condos, condominiums,
lots of revenue coming in that didn't
apartments.
before.
I mean, and just a really cool place, part of town, which we
Yep.
now refer to as Uptown Bay City, which
Yep.
is interesting because I was in Charlotte. I happened to be in Charlotte during their entire renovation because I was in Charlotte for probably about a year and a half, and I saw the renovation from it being downtown Charlotte to changing the name to Uptown Charlotte, and seeing, you know, Donald Trump now has a building there. And every time I go back, I'm so amazed because they have the major banks are all in Charlotte.
Yeah.
And to see what they have done in the outdoor entertainment and the fun and the, you know, street life and nightlife is so really cool. Those are all things that every community desires to have, right? Everyone wants to be a poppin' community. We want to be vibrant. We want to have stuff for young millennials and Gen Zers and everyone else.
For everybody.
No,
I
for
mean,
everybody.
right,
Yeah,
yep,
absolutely.
yep.
We've seen it across the board. St.
Yep.
Louis, Charlotte, parts of LA, was it
DC,
LA,
where
LA
you're-
Live,
yep.
DC, absolutely. All of these
DC 's
places.
changed, fundamentally changed.
So the question became, and we were talking about gentrification, and we were saying basically, and I'll read the definition, that gentrification is basically the process whereby the character of a poor urban area is changed by what their people moving in, improving housing, and attracting new businesses, which is what we're talking about, typically displacing the current inhabitants in the process. So, Mark, you know, you came in and you were like, hey, I had an interesting conversation this morning. We were talking about gentrification.
Yep.
So Mark, what are your thoughts? Just offhand, as we look at this, is there any way that we can not completely, and I think that there are, I'm asking this fictitiously, but
Yeah.
that we cannot completely exclude other people when the new people come into this community?
That's an interesting word. I mean, in a certain sense, you're not explicitly excluding them, but you are excluding them in the sense of, can they afford the new housing?
Yeah.
But they're not. I don't know. I mean, it's a really tough situation. I don't have an answer. I mean, I think cities need to do this to survive and grow and be viable. At the same time, you know, you are that part of the population that is currently residing there. If they don't own the home, I mean, ultimately, home ownership is a much stronger position to be in than if you are renting. You know, there's a high probability you're going to push out. I think the issue becomes structural or generational poverty, and kind of what do you do to limit that? Or
but okay, here's my thing. Okay, and as we sit here,
yeah,
and you kind of alluded to this earlier, I've been and I've been blessed to have probably the greatest experience at the total swing of the pendulum.
yeah.
I've seen especially here in the city of Saginaw and other cities around the country, the extreme poverty and the blight. And you know, I grew up, you know, single parent home. My mom did what she could. She hates when I tell the story about what it was, but it was what it was, Mom. You know, she used the welfare system until she got a job. She worked and she did those things. Her and my dad, they did an amazing thing. And they were able to transition out of poverty or out of the lower class into a middle class lifestyle. Okay. But then as I began to working with NBA athletes, you're introduced to celebrities. And so you're talking about going to homes of NBA commissioners. I didn't tell you
$30 million, $20 million.
Yeah, I didn't tell you about the time that, you know, I went to visit, went to New York, and we actually stayed in the old commissioner's home. David Stern, his New York place, and it was absolutely ridiculous.
Crazy, yeah.
I mean, so I've seen exorbitant
crazy wealth,
crazy wealth,
yeah.
And I'm not just talking about the athletes, but I'm talking about like when you're meeting, you know, Warren Buffett, and you're going to
a billionaire.
Yeah, you know, the Kodak family's house, which is they have a house not far from where you are, where you just were, Mark. So I've seen both sides of this story, and I understand it. So I understand that, you know, we need to have in these urban communities, there's services that are necessary, and these services require money. We
Right.
need
So
to bring in,
theoretically, bringing in more money provides more services for those who are in need.
and not only money, but when you talk about growing populations,
Yeah, and
that's
growing
key.
opportunities if
When-
people are prepared to take the opportunities.
We
So
have
the
a
more
ton of
jobs there are,
talent here in
right.
this area, but folks that are in this area, young people that are growing, why
there
would
aren't a
they
lot of
stay
jobs.
here?
Yeah, because there are no jobs.
There's
and
not,
so,
especially in the industries in which
Right.
they're looking for jobs. So in order to bring cities that have been impacted by manufacturing, Saginaw is one that's been hit by
all of the Midwest and the Northeast.
yeah,
is
auto
basically-
industries.
Yeah.
How do you do this in such a way that people who love and have affirmed these places as home, who have stayed here through the blight, the degradation, the continual removal of services, to attract new people coming in? It means that in our community, there's the idea we are a medical community is kind of where we're transitioning. They just released that the medical diamond is now funded 30.5 million is what it was.
30.3, but yeah.
Not 30.
Yeah, and they're trying to raise a lot more.
Yeah, so I mean, but we're looking at, you know, a few 10 millions of dollars becoming potentially billions of dollars that comes to the area. With that comes a new standard of living. It comes a new work infrastructure, because now we're talking about medical technology, all those types of things coming into an area and a community that is not prepared and not trained in the jobs that will be there. So what does that mean? That means that there's going to be either outside folks coming into these communities to get these jobs. And so
or the ones local need to get ready to be able to take them as they come.
Okay, so that's my question.
That's always been my thing of like the way out of poverty is education, whether it's college, skilled trades, something. You've got to get something that's marketable.
So my question is this, Mark, and you having been a CEO and made decisions based upon how you interact with the community, is it possible, in your opinion, for a company or a hospital or these entities that are creating these jobs, in their creation of this opportunity, to also have, as we were talking last week, retooling and retraining?
For sure, I think. I mean, because a lot of these, you know, like, the short answer is yes.
Okay.
And so, for example, you know, I know the chemical industry, so I'll talk about that, but we can talk about some other industries as well.
Because actually the chemical industry, the one you came from, with the new chip piece that they're coming and building,
and then there's a lot of money being thrown at the solar industry, and could they
absolutely so
expand
these
into
are
solar space, which could mean a lot of jobs.
These are all a part of a new world that is invading an old
one of
space.
the things we had talked about at Hemlock and didn't get to do before I left, but you know, like Delta Community College has training to certify people for chemical operations,
right?
And we had actually talked about
pipelining
that, and frankly paying someone who had the skills and the desire and the willingness, if they didn't have the financial resources to cover their tuition, because it wasn't, you know, to do something like that, it's $10,000. It's not, you know, $50,000 a year, $100,000 a year. So I certainly think you can. I think the question becomes, are the candidates, you know, that's a different world. So coming to a chemical plant every day, on time, whether you want to or not, whether you're feeling a little under the weather or not, you know, taking orders that you may not like.
He's talking about professional development. I'm hearing everything he's screaming in my ear.
Yeah. So
on the other side, absolutely.
Yeah. It's a different culture and way of life.
Yeah.
Than certain pockets of the population, and it's got nothing to do with race. I think it's got socioeconomic.
We've seen that.
That, you know, they've got to be willing to, like, not
so
only develop the technical skills, but learn how to be more professional and reliable.
Professional development, those job readiness skills, those soft skills.
There's got to be a want to.
Absolutely.
Because I think if you want to and you have talent, anything's possible.
Well, I think that a lot of people want to, but I think that many times when we see these transitory processes taking place, we'll see, like we were talking about pipelining. When we were talking about pipelining, we're talking about pipelining into entry positions where people can get an entry position.
which oftentimes is a pretty good position. with
Yeah, no,
benefits.
no. But
Yeah.
to
You
the
have to start
chagrin,
somewhere.
to my chagrin, when I still go to Hemlock Semiconductor and I look at him, it is white as white can be.
It can only change so fast.
I mean,
but
I know, but
yeah.
so what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
so when these jobs are coming in, we don't want to be training people to be sanitation workers and things those are things that are harebrained. They take no. But how can we, with this changing, and I think that we got time on our side with a lot of this, really challenge people and open pathways for training and education to where 10-week program, 15-week program for a phlebotomist.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. I think this is where, like, as part of that, they ought to be thinking about, can we get funds either from local entities or from the government, state, local, federal, of like, we've got a historic underprivileged population here that's been grossly impacted by the loss of manufacturing jobs. And can we institute training programs for entry-level positions in the medical industry for, like you said, phlebotomists or, a
lab
regular
techs,
nurse. Right.
X-ray techs. I mean, they don't take 95 years to get into these positions.
Yeah, it takes a couple of years or whatever, I think.
And so, and they come in with a decent salary, then they can be a part of this new
that gives you a platform, because a lot of companies, a lot of times, like if you're in there at a low-level job, but you're doing really well and they like you, they'll actually help you advance your education, go back to school, and kind of grow with the company, because it's way better to keep someone moving up than constantly have people turning over. Well, it's really expensive to have a high turnover.
Is what I want to say. And I know Cherise Steele Phillips, she is in the healthcare industry, if I'm not mistaken. I think she's a nurse. But I'll do this. When I was training and I was getting licensed as a implicit bias or, trainer, coordinator, unconscious bias.
I used to say I don't have any. I just have conscious bias.
Yeah, conscious, unconscious, racial bias. I mean, there's a number of names that we go by, right? When I was getting trained to be a trainer of trainers for this, I ended up in one of the classes from the West Side of State Grammar. She was an amazing trainer. She's done global training everywhere. And what we learned in those trainings is that the area of greatest bias that is implemented into how things are processed is in the healthcare industry.
Really?
The healthcare industry. Yes.
Very surprised.
I'm not, though, but because you're talking about two extreme populations interfacing in a space where normally these two worlds would not collide. How many times would surgeons really, or doctors, or staff nurses really come in contact with folk who are part of a lower population grade? The hospital is that key place, but go ahead.
And when you're talking between doctor and patient, there is a power dynamic there where one side of that relationship has the authority.
Absolutely.
Perceived or not.
Absolutely. Yep. And so it was from that place that I began to think, like, because I've seen some things. Covenant Healthcare has some serious issues as it relates to some racial issues and racial understanding. And I'm not saying that people are going to
I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that because I'm on their board. That's never come up. So I'm serious.
But once again,
I'd like to hear more about that at some point off the record.
We'll have that conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important.
Yeah.
And many times the people that run those spaces don't have the interference or the engagement. Where those things would take place, like a security guard or a triage nurse.
Right.
So I think that when we think about this community becoming a health-based community, I think that we have to also think about how we're engaging and who we're engaging. And place setting becomes a very important piece of this. Everyone has to have a place in the conversations. Now, of course, and Jonathan and I were talking about this, when you bring it in the bread roll, the dollars, you can do what you want to. But the reality of it is we really have to begin to fight for places for folks who are already in those communities. And I think
they have to fight for themselves as well.
No, I think that they have to fight for themselves. But I think that the community who promises the tax incentives, that those are our elected officials, the bases or the places where they're giving these incentives for them to come. When General Motors came, they got a lot of incentives to come in. When they left, high and dry.
Yep.
So there is a responsibility of communities, and I think our civic leaders and people, to really make sure that these are real conversations. Go ahead, Jonathan.
And something that just popped into my head, you're talking about tax incentives. That involves an informed populace.
Yes.
Because it's easy to have something, okay, this company is going to put in this apartment complex in this area, and they get brownfield, they get tax write-offs, they get delayed taxing, blah, blah, blah. They get that. It's very easy to get upset after that.
After the fact.
It's much more difficult to come to that city council meeting, and when they have that public,
have an informed conversation. Yes.
Say, I oppose this, and here's why.
And being able to do so from an understood a perspective that you really understand what's taking place, because I can tell
you
you
can't just go in and say I don't want it.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want that in my neighborhood, but that's what happens.
Yeah.
And you should want development in your neighborhood. You
Absolutely.
should want your development, your neighborhood to be moving forward. But the people, the community needs to take control, as much control as they have. They need to take hold of that and use it to steer how things are moving.
How does that happen without being I don't know, a meal in the way of huge resistance in the way of potential growth?
Well, I don't know. I've never had to deal with it. I've only run businesses and chemical businesses, but to me, it's a little bit like any negotiation.
Exactly.
And the people who represent that community, meeting with the people who are trying to develop that, and seeing if there is and it's a horrible cliche, but I like it, like a win-win scenario, and that both sides can be happy with. But you have to be well
collaboration.
Thought out. Yeah, collaborate. You have to collaborate.
Yes.
It has to be super well thought out, and you have to put yourself. Each side really has to put themselves in the other person's shoes. That's what I always try to do. So if you're like in that neighborhood, you really have to think about, like, okay, you're a developer. What do they think about, and what levers do you have that might be advantageous to them? PR, and that would probably be the biggest.
Well, what was interesting,
we're going to develop this neighborhood, but we're taking care of this population. We're putting in development programs. We're helping pull them out of poverty.
Absolutely.
Blah, 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 blah. But you have to go into it with a real thoughtful idea of how the other person thinks and what they may value and how you might deliver that.
Okay, very good. Cherise Steele Phillips, hospitals, doctors discharge patients with medications they can't afford, which yields multiple ER visits in hospitals. I got to go back to the hospital so they give me some, because I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. I mean, but that's a real thing. But I think that these pieces are super duper important. General Motors, it's funny, they just donated $50,000 to community organizations in the community. What is that a signifier to you guys? What does that tell you?
Well, they're starting to think about doing something.
And
then I go, General Motors, $50,000. That's like nothing.
That's what you always say, Mark. But you think when they start sowing into community programming,
they want to do something.
They're coming.
They're coming.
All right. So you all, we gotta read the tea leaves or the writing on the wall.
They're gonna want something.
They're wanting something, and the way that companies do this, and I'll tell you this a time because I've worked with companies from the top to the bottom, is they start in their community engagement, their community development, their CDs, their CR, community relations departments, and they work with young people. They donate to programs, because this is the way that they build the track record into the community. So as we're continuing to have these conversations and we're building out these ideas, I need the community to realize this is the time to really begin engagement. Right now,
you have to get it organized.
Absolutely.
You got to get organized.
You got to get organized. And there's got to be some key components that you're asking for. It can't just be, I don't want it, because that doesn't benefit anyone.
That's not going to happen. You're going to get run over anyway.
But what are the key? And this is big business talking to us, big business over here. Yeah. So what are the things that are going to be important? How can we work with what is going to be inevitably happen? Because money always finds its way getting what it needs. How can we do this in a way that everyone feels that they have won or gained something beneficial while they're having a seat at the table? I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you as always. See you next week. God bless you all. Grace and peace.